And hi.
And you know what? Aloha. Well, this is sort of the story.
It's the podcast where we tell each other stories. And also you are here. And I'm Max.
And I'm Janey.
And we're going to tell you some stories today. And we're pretty excited about it. I realized I almost accidentally did the opening to Hot Ones. Hot Ones, the show with hot wings and even hotter questions.
This is Hot Ones, the story with hot tea and also
even hotter hosts.
I don't watch that show.
It's fine.
But I think I nailed it. Yeah, welcome guys. Hope you're doing fine. And you enjoyed the last couple episodes. We're almost at episode 30 we were just talking about.
Yes.
And Max has suggested doing another live, like TikTok live meet and greet sort of storytelling night at episode 30.
Yes. We did our last one at 15. We had a couple people show up and it was very, very cool and sweet. And we would love to hang out with you guys again. That'll be on TikTok. So if you don't have a TikTok account,
why not? What are you, old?
Don't be a fucking square.
Yeah, be there. Yeah, so see you in 2 weeks. Bye.
Oh, not bye.
Okay.
We still have a whole podcast to do.
I'm going first this week.
Yeah.
So I'm excited to tell you some stories.
I'm also excited.
Okay.
Let's do it to it.
I'll buy you. So Max, if you're playing sort of the story bingo,
I am.
as you are always.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's time for me to give you one of your bingo squares. My grandmother was from the Philippines.
Ooh.
From Antipolo. That might be 2 bingo squares.
No, it's 1.
Okay, fine.
Do you want me to look over the sheet again? Because I can show you.
Really quickly. Can you just look over the one that we definitely made? So my grandmother was from the Philippines, from Antipolo, and she used to tell us the story of what she called the little people. And I've told a couple of these stories on here. I know. I love talking about my grandma and the little people. And so I've always been obsessed with this. Basically, I'm going to give you a rough overview of her little people. They are tiny little people. They're basically like little...
How informative. Thank
They're basically like little fairy people. You don't really see them unless they want you to, but they are constantly around. And if you want to be on their good side, you leave them gifts. And in this way, they are like every other little fairy folk or fae folk or wee folk that you've ever heard of, right? So she used to tell me this story about how there was a man and a woman in her village, and one day they woke up and their baby, they had like a new baby, its face was completely pinched. Like the day before, it was normal. The next day, the whole face starting at the lip was pinched so badly, the skin was like turning up, and the baby like was almost unresponsive. And they were like, what happened to our baby? Like they could not figure it out, and it just looked like it had a horrific injury. She described it almost like a cleft palate, but one that came on like almost overnight. And so the man and the woman tried everything they could, and eventually they called what my grandmother calls a witch doctor. And the doctor came over and, performed a bunch of like ceremonies and looked into it, and then came back and said, hey, you have a family of little people living in your house. And they were like, we do? And they're like, yeah. And up till now it's been kind of fine, but one of you stepped on the wife and killed her. And they were like, oh no.
Squished.
She got squished. So you squished her wife. And so to punish this family, they said that the little people pinched their baby, basically. And it's like something that actually, like, that's a story that like came up a lot in their village, is that babies especially would get pinched by the little people. And so they tried to like make offerings and stuff to them, but like they had already offended them so much that I'm pretty sure the baby died.
Oh my God.
Yeah, this isn't like, the stories are told. This is just something my grandmother fully believed. It was a story that happened while she was alive and was hearing it. It was like real time for her. So it's something that she really believed. And I'm going to go into another one of her little people stories a little bit later. But last night, I started to read a book that I got on Fearless Women. It's an anthology of like fairy tales where the women are the protagonists. And it was really cool. And I was looking up stories from Iroquois legends. And as I was looking up that, I was like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do 2 stories of Iroquois monsters, basically, and women who defeat them. And I was like all excited about it. And then I went to go do research because, you know, the first story was called The Vampire Skeleton, and I was like, this doesn't seem like maybe an Iroquois word. I just don't know if...
I don't think either of those words.
Well, like, it seems to me, and then I looked it up, and obviously the woman who wrote the anthology is an Australian woman, and I was like, okay, like, she's obviously not Iroquois, and I'm pretty sure a white woman, and so I was like, okay, let's look up the original, where she got the source, because she does source all her stuff, and then that person, I'm pretty sure, was also white. And I was like, all right, so I can't just say the story of the vampire skeleton written by 2 white people and be like, classic Iroquois. So then I went to go look it up. And while I was looking up Iroquois legends, specifically looking for this particular monster, which I could not find, by the way. So I'm not saying it doesn't exist. If you are part of the Haudenosaunee, like, grouping and you do know this legend, please reach out to me, because I do want to tell it. But again, I only found it written by white people. Yeah. So I'm not going to tell it because of that. But upon looking for this, I came across something called the Joge-O, which is Iroquois, or Haudenosaunee, which is, it means people of the longhouses, is what, like, Iroquois people call themselves. I don't know if you knew this, but Iroquois was actually a name given to them by, like, enemy tribes. It means, like, enemy adder or evil adder or something like that. Like, it's the same way that Sioux was given to the Sioux people, it means enemy. It was like a way to, like, it was kind of like propaganda. Interesting. And it made everybody not trust them. So it's kind of fun little history. Yeah. But they call themselves the Haudenosaunee people. It's the people of the longhouses. It's how they lived, because they were not nomadic tribes, so they built really long houses. Mm-hmm. Oh, so the Joge-O, they were so long that I'm not even going to finish the story. I'm just going to describe the house. No, so
there's a house and it just keeps going and going and going.
So I'm actually going to go through 2 different indigenous tribes' versions of the Little People that sound a lot like my grandma's version of the Little People, because this is a pretty universal construct, and I thought it was really fun to go through 2 different, like, you know, cultures. Technically 3 different cultures. So the first one was compiled by Glenn Welker on indigenouspeople.net. He compiled a bunch of native stories. I couldn't find a lot about him personally. Like, I searched and searched, couldn't find anything about Glenn Welker. I have read his stuff before, but basically he made it his mission to compile a bunch of indigenous people's stories. And he focused a lot on the Iroquois, so he might be, like, a member of the Iroquois Nation, but I'm not fully sure that he is. But he did work for the National Museum of the American Indians, which again makes me think that he was a native man. But I couldn't find that for sure, so that's all I have on him. But here we go. This is called The Gifts of the Little People, also called the Joge-O. So there was a young boy, and his parents both die, and he is then given to his uncle, who is supposed to care for him. But his uncle is super lazy and just really abusive and terrible. And so he immediately is like, I'm not taking care of this kid. He treats him like he's his servant. Like, he makes him go out and do all the hunting. This kid does all the cleaning. Like, he works like a dog for this uncle. And then in return, the uncle dresses him in rags and refuses to, like, make anything else for him or to, like, purchase anything else for him. Like, he just does not want to care for this kid. And he abuses him constantly. So he's living a pretty terrible life. This actually gives him the name Dirty Clothes. That's what people call him.
Cinderella.
Exactly. Exactly. So Dirty Clothes is living a full-on Cinderella story right now. Mm-hmm. Very romantic. So one day, Dirty Clothes is out hunting, and he sees, like, and he has these squirrels hanging from his belt. So every time he shoots a squirrel, he'll tie it to his belt and then keep going. And he's a really good hunter. He has his bows and arrows, and he's like, this is something he's used to doing. But he keeps walking, like, he's trying to find more and more food for his uncle. Otherwise, when he gets home, he'll probably get beat for not having enough food having been gathered. And so he keeps walking. He comes to a cliff that rises out from the water. And the legend has it that this cliff, this area, is where the little people beat their drums. And everybody is scared of this cliff. Like, hunters won't go anywhere near it. They're like, we don't want to mess with the little people because they're kind of fickle, right? And so he knows this, but his mom used to tell him that if you have good in your heart, you shouldn't be afraid to go anywhere. Like, the creatures of the forest, all of these people around them, they can sense when you mean them ill. And so you don't really have anything to fear if you don't have any ill intentions. And this kid is like, I don't have any ill intentions. So he keeps walking. And he sees a squirrel kind of like climbing up a hickory tree. And so he kind of like gets really still and quiet. And he pulls his bow and arrow out. And he's just about to fire when he hears a tiny voice whisper, "Brother, shoot him again. You missed him." And he's like, "What?" And so he looks around for a bit, like he cannot tell. And he's like, "Shoot him again. Just one more time. You missed the shot." And he looks down, and at his feet, he sees two tiny little hunters, right?
Aw.
They haven't seen him yet because he's been standing there pretty still hunting. But these two tiny little hunters are like, they have this tiny little bow and arrow, and they're holding it up, and they're about to fire. And so he kind of watches for a bit, and the one hunter does fire his arrow, but it comes up short. He's too far away. The squirrel is too far up. And also the squirrel's a little bit too big. So he's like, oh, they're never going to get that squirrel. He's like, oh no. And he sees they don't have anything hanging on their belts. Like they haven't pulled any like game. And so he decides like, okay, I'm going to help him out. So he pulls back his arrow and he fires and it hits the squirrel right away and the squirrel falls down. And so the little people are like, oh my God, you got him. What? I was sure you missed. And so they run up and they're like, yeah. But then they see, they're like, this arrow's too big for, whose arrow is this? And they look around and they catch sight of Dirty Clothes and they're like, hey, you shot him. Good job. And they're like, yeah, that's a great shot. Well, come over here and get your prize. Like you did it. And Dirty Clothes is like, oh, no, I shot that one for you. Like, you take that one. And in fact, I can see that you guys haven't caught anything today. He's like, take these ones too. And he takes the other squirrels off his belt. And he's like, these ones are also yours. Just thank you for letting me hunt on your land. And the little people are like delighted. They're like, that's great. Thank you so much. And so they all they dance a little bit. They like pick up the squirrel and they're like, hey, why don't you come back with us? We want to be able to thank you properly. We also want to tell people what you did for us. This like has never happened before. Like, come with us. And Dirty Clothes is thinking like, I could go with them, but like I might get in trouble if I like leave. But then he looks up and he realizes like the sun isn't very high yet. Like he has all day to hunt. He's like, I'll have time if I just go with them right now. And so he walks with them. And along the way, they're chatting with him. They're just in such good spirits, these two little hunters. And they take him down to the bottom of that cliff where they have a tiny canoe. And the canoe is like the size of his shoe. And they climb in. They're like, get in. And he's like, oh, no. And they're like, trust us, just step in. And so he steps into the canoe and he's like, I'm about to drown these my new little friends. This is terrible. But as soon as his foot touches it, he starts to shrink down. And eventually he's as small as they are. And he's in their canoe. And he's marveling at this. He's like, whoa, what magic is this? It's fantastic. And they put their oars in the water, and as they row, their canoe starts to rise up and up and up, and it starts to fly through the air, and it goes above the cliffs, above the trees, above his village, farther and farther, until it makes it to the top of this mountain where there's the like cliff faces, and they go into one of the cliffs, or the caves, and that is where the little people live. And so now they get out and they run out and they tell everybody what he did. And they're like, this is this guy. And everybody starts to like dance and cheer. And they're like, wow, welcome. And so they immediately like prepare a feast and they start to just teach him. They're like, you're so great. Well, here's some more things you might want to know. And so he ends up spending 4 days with them where he's just partying and dancing. And they're telling him everything they know. They're telling him all about like the secrets of the forest. They tell him all about growing corn and the squash and all these things that feed humans. They're like, this is a better way to do it. We notice you guys doing this. It's great, but like you could be doing so much more. And this is how you honor the animals, and this is how you do this. And then at the end, the last thing they teach him on day 4 is they teach him a dance. And they're like, this is our special dance. It honors the Jogeo. It honors the little people. So they're like, it honors the Jogeo. And when people do it, we love it when people do this dance. So we're going to teach it to you, but you have to do it in the dark. It's called like the dark dance. And basically, when you do it in the dark, it allows the little people to come and dance with you without being seen. And so when you sing the song and you dance this dance, then the little people can come in too. And it's like you're honoring them and you're joining together as like a people. And it's like a dance of like unity. And he's like, that's great, thanks. So they dance this dance all night long. And then finally day 4 comes and he says like, hey, I have to go home. I've been away for 4 days. I'm going to be in so much trouble. And they're like, okay. So they all say goodbye to him. And the 2 little hunters take him back down on their canoe. They fly back down to the river and they walk him through the forest. And as they're walking through the forest, they start pointing out, they're like, hey, you see this plant here? This is what it's called. This is what it can do. And he starts memorizing, right? He's like, okay, thanks. I won't forget that. And he's committing all of these plant names to memory. And he gets up and he finally sees the edge of his village. And he turns around to say goodbye to his 2 new friends. And they have disappeared. So he's like, oh, okay, well, bye, I guess. I don't feel like we had something there, but all right. And so he keeps walking. And he notices something really strange right away. His village looks different. And he's like, oh, which is this is the universal concept. This kills me.
Yeah.
So
we've talked about this in previous episodes also.
And over and over, a universal trend. And so he notices his village has changed, and he's looking at it, and a woman he doesn't really recognize walks up to him and says, "Hey, stranger, welcome. Who are you?" And he's like, "What? You don't know?" Because it's not like a big village. Like, it's just wild. And he's like, my name is Dirty Clothes. And she's like, why? And she's like, you're dressed so well. Why do they call you that? And he looks down and he realizes he's not wearing his rags anymore. He doesn't know when it switched, but he's wearing like really fine buckskin, and it's like embroidered with moose hair, and it has porcupine quills. And it's just like the most beautiful garment he's ever seen. And he's like, whoa. Yeah, I guess that is kind of weird. It's an old nickname. Can I ask you, that longhouse over there, a man lives there, right? There's a man and his nephew who wears rags. And she's like, oh, that lazy thing? Like, why would you ask about him? He died years ago. And honestly, he never did much for anyone. He was a burden. Like, everybody hated him. Pretty relieved when he died, actually. Why would you ask about him? Like a fine young warrior like yourself. And he's like, a warrior? And he looks down at himself and he realizes he is no longer a little boy. He has grown in these last 4 days, and now he's like a strong warrior. He's like taller than everyone else in the village. And he's like, what happened? Because again, he spent the whole time little. So it wasn't like he noticed anything. Also, he was probably taller than anyone else anyway. And so he goes to the village and he immediately sits down with all these people and he starts to tell them his story. Now, there's a bunch of old people there, of course, and they remember Dirty Clothes, and they can see him and they're like, oh my God, like, it is you. Like, that's so crazy. So he tells them everything he knows. He tells them everything he learned. And the last thing he tells them is how to do the dark dance. And that night they put out all the fires and everything like that. And they all sing and they all start to dance. And as they dance in the dark, they hear the voices of the little people join in with them. And they realize that, like, oh, they're here and they're dancing with us. And we've gained this friendship. And so Glenn Welker ends with, to this day, the little people remain the friends of the people of the Longhouse, and the dark dance is still done.
That's so nice.
Yeah. Kind of fun, right?
I like that a lot. I like that he gave them a squirrel and in turn became kind of like a living god.
He gave them 3 squirrels.
Oh, you're right.
You know? Yeah. The one thing that is universal is that the little people give more like than they get, but they also will punish if they don't get. So it's the idea, like, you can get on their bad side, and this is why all the hunters are afraid of them, right? Like, they are little, but they can cause a lot of damage. But if you are kind to them and you respect them, then they tend to give way more than what you gave to them. It's the gesture, you know? Yeah,
and in a lot of mythologies also, the little people, like, you can give them, like, a minor slight. If you, like, pass them on the road and don't say hi, then they'll be like, oh, and your whole family's dead.
And you know what? I'm burning your village to the ground, motherfucker. Well, so there's a second one that I found. This isn't Iroquois. This is from the Mohegan legends, from the Mohegan tribes. They are from Connecticut. Basically, that's, like, the area that they are right now. So the Mohegan legend, they call them not Jogeo. They call them Makiawisug, which I'm probably pronouncing that way wrong. But basically, that's their own version of the little people. They believe there's a couple rules, and there's a couple of rules that you can follow, but there's also a couple of things you can look out for and how to, know they're around. One is the little people only come out after nightfall because, again, they don't want to be seen. They're all about being in the dark and being unseen by humans. If you hear the call of the whippoorwill, that at night they'll start hearing this whippoorwill, like, with their call. The little people, that's when they're, like, kind of coming out. It's like announcing their arrival. You're supposed to leave baskets of food and other gifts for them. And so the Mohegan people have these baskets that were specially made to put all of the little people gifts, and they would leave them, like, at the edge of the woods. And then the legend had it the little people would come and they would accept those offerings. So, and actually, when they come out, they're wearing moccasin flowers for shoes, which I don't know what a moccasin flower is, personally, but I love the idea that they're wearing tiny little flowers as moccasins. So and cute. They walk in. And actually, Makiawisug means whippoorwill moccasins. That's, like, literally the direct translation. So.
And if you're wondering what a whippoorwill call sounds like, it sounds like the word whippoorwill.
Whippoorwill.
Yep.
So here's the rules. If you see a little person, which you're not supposed to, right? So if you do accidentally see one, you cannot stare directly at them. It's rude. If you do stare at them and you are rude, they'll be rude right back, and they'll point their finger at you, and you'll find that you cannot move anymore, and then they'll come up and they'll steal all your shit. Like, and let that be a lesson to you.
Yeah, don't be fucking rude.
Also, you shouldn't talk about them in the summer when they're most active. So we're still technically in spring.
Yep.
So we're done. Do this real quick. I know this is coming out in May. Still technically spring. So yeah. It's fine. In return for kindness, for all the gifts, and for respecting them, the little people taught the Mohegan people how to grow corn and how to use healing herbs. So there's one legend from the Mohegan people that I thought was really fun. It says that amongst the Makiawisug was a little, like, healer, an old woman named Granny Squannet. And Granny Squannet... Max.
Sorry, I'm playing a D&D campaign right now, and my fiancé is playing a character named Great Granny Sweetness. So I
really thought that I was gonna just...
Yeah.
He actually pulled this from legend.
Yeah, I was just hearing Squannet instead of Sweetness was a weird jolt to my system.
So, there's an old woman named Granny Squannet, and she, legend had it, she would cause huge storms whenever she fought with her husband, which is hilarious. She kind of controlled the weather. But also, she was a super powerful healer. And healers in the Mohegan tribe, whenever they were, like, having a particularly hard time with somebody's illness or somebody's hurt, they would call out to Granny Squannet. They would be like, I need your help, like, please come help, whatever. And they would call to her, or they'd leave offerings to her. And then she would, you know, come in and, like, help them out. And so she was pretty important for the Mohegan people. And one night, there was an old woman, a human woman, a healer, and she was like a well-known healer. She was in her house, and there was a big storm, right? So she's waiting out the storm. It's getting nighttime. And then from the forest, she starts to hear the calls of whippoorwills. And she was like, oh, that's so weird. In the storm and everything, these birds are calling out. And so she looks outside her window and she doesn't see anybody. Like, she doesn't see any, like, whippoorwills flying, whatever. And the storm is getting worse and worse. And so she's like, so she closes the window. But very soon after she hears those calls of the whippoorwills, she gets a knock on her door and she opens it, and there's a little boy standing on her porch. And he's like, hi. He introduces himself. He says, my name is Wigun, and I need you to come with me. I'm with the Makiawisug people, and we need help from a healer. So if you could please just come with me, it would be great. She's like, okay. So she gets her stuff, you know, she gathers her supplies, and she closes her door, and she walks with him. And they walk through the rain, they walk through the storm, and eventually they start descending down underground. And she finds, what?
You said that with the cadence of down to Goblin Town.
You need to get out of D&D.
That's not from D&D.
Where's it from?
The Hobbit.
That's from D&D.
Down to Goblin Town.
Yeah, here's the thing. That's from D&D. All right? Name one difference.
I can't. There are so many that I can
name.
That's like you're asking me to say the difference between an orange and a Toyota Camry. I don't even know where to begin.
It is not. So, guys, by the way, if you can answer that riddle, we've been trying to solve it for weeks. What is the difference between an orange and a Toyota Camry? Message us at sortofthestory@gmail.com. Just help us out. And if you have any pictures of oranges in Toyota Camrys, we're trying to solve a bet.
Or if you have a Toyota Camry that is orange.
That's impossible. So she goes all the way down into the ground, and she finds herself amongst these big, like, this huge rock structure that's shaped like a beehive. And they take her into one of the little compartments, and there's an old woman lying in a bed. And that's Granny Squannet. And she is very sick. She's clearly close to death. And actually, her sickness is the reason why there's such a heavy storm, is because she cannot control what's happening anymore. It's like every time she loses control and fights with her husband, a storm happens. Like, it's almost like she's keeping the storms at bay, it seems.
Mm-hmm.
So all the little people are like, hey, she can't die. Like, it's really imperative she doesn't die. And so this healer woman sits down and gets to work. And it takes her almost a full month to be able to cure Granny Squannet, but she eventually does. And the little people are so happy. They give her this basket and it's filled with gifts. And they're like, open this when you get home. Never forget us. We are really grateful. And then they blindfold her and they lead her back home, which is weird because I don't think they blindfolded her on the way there, but I guess they were like, she's never going to remember this.
It's been a month. Like most of us don't remember what we had for lunch yesterday.
I remember how to get places. That's not true. I can't
true.
remember anything. Inside the basket, when she gets home, she opens it. There are quartz crystals, painted skins, and bunches of herbs. And then she has like a really great relationship with the little people from then on out because they know that she's the one that helped them.
That's so nice.
Yeah, so that's from that story was from mohegan.nsn.us. There's a bunch of stuff. Just look up Mohegan tribe. We'll put it in the show notes. But that's their story of the Makiowisug. So 2 different tribes, 2 different stories of the little people. And I want to tell one more. I know I'm telling a bunch of stories, but my grandmother, when she would talk about the little people, this is almost exactly how she would describe them, right? Like this relationship, everything is almost the exact same. And I told this story on this podcast before, but welcome to episode 28. You're going to hear it again. But when my grandmother was little, she said that when she was about 2nd grade, she stopped going to school at 3rd grade when the Japanese occupied Antipolo. But she was in the 2nd grade and a little boy in her class, they were all walking home and they branched off to walk their separate ways to their houses. And he was walking down the street. He's in a school uniform and he's, making his way through like this long, long stretch to get home through like farmland and stuff. And he disappeared. And he was gone for 2 weeks. He never made it home. Everybody searched for him. They searched the woods. They searched everywhere. At that point, they had pretty much said, an animal probably got him. He's little. He's walking alone. There's no trace of him. He was probably taken by an animal. And so they had all, done their mourning for him, and they had pretty much stopped searching. But they were all very upset by this. And then about 2 weeks later, a farmer is coming down that same road, and he sees this little boy. And he's in his school uniform. He's clean. He is totally fine. He looks normal, and he's walking home. So the farmer stops and is like, hey, we've been looking for you. Your parents are looking everywhere for you. We thought an animal took you. What happened? And so he, pulls him onto whatever he's driving, probably, caribou or pulling something if I'm, just thinking about the area. As he's trying to, get information from this boy, the little boy opens his mouth to talk, but instead of speaking forward, he's speaking backwards. Everything he, opens his mouth to say just comes out almost like you hit rewind. So it's not even, the cadence of gibberish. It's the full cadence of something on rewind. Mm-hmm. And he looks confused. The man is like, whoa, what is this? Very creepy. Mm-hmm. And so they bring him to doctors, and every time he tries to talk or do anything, it's just all full backwards speak. And so they spend about a year with him. He doesn't go to school with my grandmother anymore. He goes to the school, but he has his own special classes because they have to reteach him his own language. And after a year, he's able to finally kind of start to explain what happened to him. And his story is that as he was walking along the road, he saw a little person in the grass, in the tall grass, and they were waving to him and kind of laughing and gesturing him over. So he walked over to them and they said, follow us. And so they kept walking into the forest. And he's a little boy, and he's like, all right, here I go. You're cute. And he follows them deep into the forest, into a tree. And he climbs in through this tree, and he sees there's this whole host of little people living in this big tree. And at one side, there's a big throne, and the king is sitting on this throne. He's looking out as all these little people are dancing. And so they're all dancing and having fun and eating. And so he starts dancing with them, and he's sweaty and just having the greatest time of his life. And eventually the king calls him over and says, hey, the reason why you're here is because we need salt. And the little boy's like, what? He's like, salt. We need salt. It's what we eat. It's what we like. We're obsessed with it. We need salt. We're running out. So you need to get us some salt. Okay. And the little boy is like, yeah, I'm a little boy. I don't actually have a lot of access to salt. So I'm really sorry. I can't get you that. And they kind of negotiate with him for a little while. They realize oh yeah, he doesn't know where any salt is. And so they're like, all right, well, thanks. You can go now. And he's like, oh, okay. So then he crawls back out of the tree and he walks back to the road, and then he starts to walk home again. So all in all, he was gone for 30 minutes to an hour. But when he finally was, found that farmer on the side of the road, he was told he had been gone for 2 weeks. Mm-hmm. And so that's my grandmother's story of the little people. And then that also, the whole salt thing, there's one more story from Iceland, which I heard on the podcast Imaginary Worlds, which is a great podcast. You all should go listen to it. But basically, the story from Iceland of a woman, an old woman, who followed the fairies, or the little people, the Icelandic little people, into a tree. And when she went into their tree, everybody was dancing, just like in my grandma's story from when she was little. Everybody was dancing and having a great time, but all around them were huge pillars of salt. On every, wall, this huge trunk, this round room, were just these huge pillars of salt. And they were doing this dance and having the greatest time and, I don't know, eating the salt, I'm assuming, but, they were just having the greatest time. And in that story, the old woman dances and dances and dances until she dies. She can't stop dancing. And she dies.
In Irish, wee folk tales, that's something that happens. If you go into a fairy mound, that's one of the things that can happen to you, is that you just dance until you die. Mm-hmm. But also it makes sense in Iceland, the pillars of salt make a lot of sense because a lot of Icelandic food is preserved with salt. So it's all a lot of the meats historically are salt brined to preserve them through the winter.
Yeah.
So
that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, it's a very coveted commodity to have a lot of salt. So it makes sense.
Yeah. But just little things that when you put all of these folk tales and folklore together from around the world, the fact that, again, and these are my two sides of my family, the Native American, specifically Sioux side of my family, and then the Filipino side, the fact that you can find very similar stories with very similar details that are so old kind of makes you think. Where do they come from? Mm-hmm. Where do they go?
We've also talked before about the trope of you're asked to come along with something that you don't really understand as a mark of gratitude. They're oh, let me thank you, come to my house for lunch. And then you go, and then you're gone for what feels like a little while. And then when you return, you found that it's been a very long time. It's the Rip Van Winkle. It's the Oisin, all of that. So that's a really fun trope that I like a lot.
And we've said it several times on this podcast. There's a lot of stories that, you can track back on this podcast, 28 whole episodes. You can track back of us talking about this. So that is very fun. Yeah. If you guys have your own stories of this, if you have family legends about little people, I want to read them. I'm so curious about just the little people or the wee folk or the fairy folk. Just if you have your own family legends that grandparents passed down, and you want to share it with us, email us at sortofthestory@gmail.com. So that I can read all your little words. And send us a picture of an orange Toyota Camry.
If you have both, you own the podcast.
Okay,
now.
You have to take a video of yourself telling the story out loud from inside your orange Toyota Camry.
Yes, and then we'll give you the podcast.
Toyota Corolla?
I think I said a Toyota Camry.
Are you guys our boss now? You gotta stop making deals. Okay, Max.
Janey.
You wanna take a break?
I do.
Woo! See you later. Forever. Bye. It's been really nice.
No,
guys.
don't leave.
Thank you
Please
so
don't
much
leave.
for coming here. We'll never see you again. Bye. Welcome to Sort of the Story.
Stop.
My name is Janey.
Stop saying goodbye.
See you later, guys. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for coming.
And also stop saying hello. All right, it's my turn, okay? It's my turn.
All right. Guys, thank you so much for coming. And we'll see you next week. Bye.
So anyways, this is the last episode of our podcast. Unfortunately, we have other projects that we'd like to pursue individually. No.
I'm sorry. What are you doing without me?
I have a whole life, dude.
Rude.
This is not the last episode. That was a joke. We're going to keep doing this until we die.
What if they all just started collectively just throwing their computers out? No!
Then they had problems that we are not responsible for.
Send us your computers. For our collection.
Okay, so my story.
Okay, sorry, go ahead.
My story is called The Seven Bones. It is from a story collection that I got. It's called The Telltale Lilac Bush and Other West Virginia Ghost Tales by Ruth Ann Music, published by the University Press of Kentucky.
Amazing!
Yes. So there's a really great section at the beginning that talks about sort of West Virginia as a location in folklore. And I'm actually just going to read the first little paragraph of the intro for this book. So the first paragraph of the introduction: anyone who has ever lived in West Virginia or even traveled through the state can easily see what an ideal place it would be for ghosts. It is an unending sequence of hills and valleys with a backdrop of other mountains in the distance. Over all these mountains and valleys is a wilderness of shrubbery and trees, so that genuinely lonesome places exist in almost all sections of the state. Hundreds or even thousands of ghosts could gather nightly on West Virginia's hills or sigh from the treetops, and few living souls would know the difference.
They're right. Too.
Yeah.
They're completely... If you've ever driven through West Virginia, even going to the little towns, like, they all have this quality of, like, we've been here.
Yeah, there's a very old quality
Someone's died here.
Yeah.
Recently, maybe.
Yes, so...
somebody's currently being murdered in this house.
But Ruth Ann Musick, who is the writer of this book, by the way, was published in 1965, I think?
This is a cool cover.
Yeah, it's great. But she lived from 1897 to 1974. She grew up in Missouri and then moved to Iowa and then Wisconsin and then Arizona and then back to Iowa and then to West Virginia, where she spent the rest of her life. And she has done a bunch of work on the folktales of Missouri. And then once she permanently relocated to West Virginia, she did a bunch about the folktales of West Virginia, to the point that she revived the dormant West Virginia State Folklore Society, which had been dormant since 1917. So in 1950, she revived the West Virginia State Folklore Society because she had become such a voice in West Virginia folklore.
What a cool lady.
Cool. Yeah, she was also an activist for animal rights, rights of Native peoples, environmental causes, and especially mountaintop removal mining and acid rain, preventing those from affecting communities in the way that West Virginia has been really just wrecked by massive industry, and especially the mining industry. So the mining industry, when it came to West Virginia, there was a huge boom of industrialism, which drove a bunch of people out. Anyone who wasn't in the mining industry, or I think the logging industry was the other one that was kind of a big thing in West Virginia, was kind of driven out unless they were useful to that. And it destroyed a lot of the land that people had learned to live off of and everything like that. So West Virginia was just rocked by the industrial changes in the mining industry, which is where this story comes from. There's a whole section in this book. This book is organized by topic. So there are stories about jealous rivals, stories about wives who return, from death, ghostly children, murdered kinsmen, omens of death, deadly visions, headless ghosts, hidden money, haunted places, slaves, murdered peddlers, mine ghosts, railroad ghosts, animals and birds, weird creatures, and immigrant ghosts.
This is so cool.
Yeah. So...
Come here. Sorry, there's a tiny cat smelling our microphone. Come here.
So this is from the section on immigrant ghosts.
Cool.
Again, because of the mining industry, lots of people, when they came to the U.S. in the early 20th century, or even in the late 19th century, when they came to the U.S. and they had to find jobs, a lot of times they ended up as workers in industries like logging and mining. And so a lot of people, especially from the Balkans, ended up in West Virginia. So there's a special section in this book specifically for stories that originated elsewhere and were brought to West Virginia and became a part of the West Virginia folkloric landscape because of the people who brought them there. So this folktale ghost story originally came from Czechoslovakia.
Okay.
Which is very exciting.
I want to read this book later. Like, I keep looking at it. Like, also, before you even begin, just the backdrop of West Virginian, like, mining communities, there is a Sabrina, like, Chilling Adventures of Sabrina, like, feel about it. Like, specifically ghost stories and horror surrounding mines is such a specific, like, animal. Like, there's nothing else in the world like it. And I also feel like it's so closed in a really specific way, if that makes sense.
Yeah, if you've never been in a mine, you can't really...
And I've never been in a mine. I would like to point out, I've never been in a mine. I've been in a cave.
I've actually been in one of the mines in West Virginia. When I was in middle school, we did a trip out to the mountains in West Virginia to go caving. And
Max, what school did you go to that made children mine?
But we had the opportunity to visit one of the mines, and it's like, it goes on forever. And it's all like, the passageways are either massive because they're trying to get to things that are up higher in the earth than where they originally, struck the passage, or they're so tight that only like one person can fit through, because why would you mine further if, one person can fit through? Yeah. And they just go on for so long. They're terrifying. So I read like probably 10, 15 stories from this book, because they're not very long, in the process of finding the story that I'm going to tell today. and a couple of them deal with mines. And I also have a claustrophobia of the underground.
Yeah, she does.
Personally, so stress me out a little bit of a lot of it.
Okay.
But this book is really great. I definitely recommend this as a collection of ghost stories because it's also it's beautiful. And Ruth Ann Music does the thing that we've talked about a lot of ethical storytelling, where she references where she got the story from, where they're from, when she recorded it, and also any kind of notes that she has for like connections to other stories. And she also gives the classification for all of them and all of the tropes that appear in the stories, which is great.
Wild, because didn't you say she was born in like the late 1800s?
Yeah.
Like, how did she know to do that? And which means, by the way, when you're like, oh, it was a sign of the times. No, it wasn't. Because Ruth Ann Music was born in like 1897, and she still managed to be an ethical folklorist.
Yep.
So
yeah,
like,
this book was published in 1965.
Yeah, guys, the whole this has been killing me about reading the more we get into folklore. There's no excuse. If Ruth Ann Music could do it, other people could also do it.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
So anyways, some ghost stories from West Virginia. The Telltale Lilac Bush. Definitely look it up if you're in the mood for some spooky ghost stories. But the story that I'm going to tell you today is called The Seven Bones. And again, this story comes from Czechoslovakia to West Virginia. There once was a young girl, and her lover went away to war. It was sort of tradition in Czechoslovakia when men turned 21, they would go and serve in the armed forces for 6 years and then come back home. So her lover went to war. But after a long time, she hadn't heard from him, and she started to worry that something had happened. So she went to an old fortune teller in her town, and she asked if there was a way that she could find out whether her lover was alive or dead. So the fortune teller told her to gather 7 different bones from 7 different graves and boil them in a pot of water until midnight for 7 nights. And at this time, there was an epidemic going on. So there were all of these like shallow graves. People were being buried on top of each other. Old bones, like in graveyards, were being dug up to make room for new bodies.
Oh.
So they just had piles of bones in the graveyards and everything like that.
So she didn't have to dig
Yeah, she didn't have to
6
rob
feet
graves.
under for 7 graves. I was like, that's a lot of work.
Yeah. So she found 7 bones in the graveyard, and she took them back to her house. And for 7 nights, she would boil water with the bones until midnight. And every night, the bones would say to her, "Pucha, pucha, pucha," which means come, come, come. She would just hear the bones whispering this until midnight every night. And just before midnight on the 7th night, she heard someone coming to her house. And what she heard was horses' hooves. So what the fortune teller had told her is that if your lover is alive, he will come to you on foot.
Oh, no.
If he is dead, he will come to you on horseback. If he is dead and he is a good spirit, he will come to you on a black horse. If he is dead and he is an evil spirit, he will come to you on a white horse.
Yeah.
So she hears hooves outside of her house, and she peeks out the window and she sees her lover astride a white horse.
Uh-oh.
Which means that he's an evil spirit. And
great.
He rides up to her house and he calls out to her and he says, "My love, I've come back. I heard you and I came, and I'm so glad to see you. Let's go get married." And so she remembers also what the fortune teller told her. She told her to assemble 7 little bundles of cloth. And if she left her house with either her lover alive or dead, if she left her house, to bring those 7 bundles of cloth and a rosary. And so she goes out to see her lover, and she brings these 7 bundles of cloth in her skirts and a rosary. And he's like, "My love, I'm so glad I'm finally home and we can finally be together. Jump on the horse. We'll go get married."
Nope.
And so she jumps up on the horse and he rides away. They ride for a long, long time through the night. As they're riding, he's singing a song, and it goes, "How the moon brightly shines, how the horse swiftly runs." But as they keep riding, his song changes a little bit, and he starts to sing, "How the moon brightly shines, how the ghosts swiftly glide."
Uh-oh.
So
It's okay. You know what? We knew it. We knew that this was coming. She's like, all right, we prepared for this.
So they keep riding until finally they get to a church. And around the church, as usual, there's a cemetery.
Okay.
And he says to her, "We're at the church. Let's go. It's finally time. Let's get married. Jump off the horse." And she's like, "Well, a gentleman would jump off the horse first and help me down." And he's like, "Oh, absolutely. Of course. I'm sorry." And he jumps off the horse. And she reaches under her skirts. She grabs these 7 bundles of cloth and throws them in 7 different directions.
Oh.
Her lover immediately turns horrible.
Ooh.
His hands turn into claws and his eyes flash black, and he runs at an inhuman speed towards the bundles.
Mm-hmm.
Meanwhile, she slides down the opposite side of the horse and
Yeah.
runs as fast as she can away from there.
Good for her.
And he doesn't chase her because he's busy tearing up these cloth bundles, and he can't go after her until he's torn these bundles all open.
Jeez.
So she's bought herself some time. She runs off into the darkness until she comes across an abandoned cottage, and she runs in through the door, slams it, and she hangs her rosary over the doorknob to protect her.
Yeah.
She's, breathing heavily, and when she finally has a chance to take stock of the house, she sees this dark cabin, mostly abandoned, as far as she can tell. There are some chickens clucking in the corner of the cabin, and then she looks over and there's a bench against the wall.
So it's not abandoned. It belongs to the chickens.
And she, as her eyes adjust to the darkness inside of this cabin, she sees that there's a figure laying on the bench along the side of the cabin. And she looks over, and it is a man lying dead.
Oh.
Where he died presumably in his sleep.
Okay.
And has just been here rotting.
He's not he doesn't smell? Okay, sorry.
Mm-hmm.
Why did you know that? Keep going.
So she's taking stock of this room, and she hears her lover running up at an inhuman speed.
No. Oh, I hate
Towards
that.
the door of this cabin. And he runs up to the door and he starts banging on it, and he rattles the doorknob, and then he jumps back.
Yes.
Because he can't get into the house because he's an evil spirit,
Mm-hmm.
and she has hung a rosary on the doorknob.
Mm-hmm.
And he is just out there screaming. He's like, let me in, let me in. We're supposed to be married.
Oh, no.
And she sort of backs away from the door a little bit. And then her lover looks in through the window. He sees the man lying dead on the bench against the side wall of the cabin. And he calls out to him.
Oh,
And
no.
he says, my friend, please help me open this door. And then the girl sees from this corpse,
Mm-hmm.
the body doesn't move, but the man gets up.
Oh, okay.
And walks over to the door. And he says, brother, I'd help you if I could. And he rattles the doorknob and he says, but I'm an evil spirit too.
Oh, no, she's stuck in the house with an evil spirit.
Well, he can't really do anything to her.
Okay, because his body isn't moving.
Yeah.
Okay.
So he can't really do anything to her, but she is stuck in a house with an evil spirit. But there's nothing that the two spirits can do because they have this rosary on the doorknob and they're both powerless against the rosary, which is great.
That's pretty good. Yeah. It's nice to know that there are weapons.
So her fiance is outside throwing a tantrum and screaming and roaring. And finally he walks around to the side of the house and he starts scratching with his claw-like hands against the side of the cabin. And he calls out to the evil spirit inside and he says, brother, help me. I'm going to break through this wall. And so she hears this and she presses her back against the far corner, and she watches these two spirits just clawing at the wall, and they're about to break through it. And the chickens, meanwhile, in the corner, are disturbed by this loud scratching sound, as you can probably imagine.
They're like, this is super fucked up.
She has a thought. And so she yells out to the chickens, and she says, please, I need help. And this big rooster comes out from the middle of this.
Enter Foghorn Leghorn.
This big rooster comes out from this clump of chickens. And she's like, please, rooster, if you cry out, if you deliver your cock crow, then the evil spirits will go away. Please, will you help me? I'm in danger. And this rooster says to her, no, I won't crow for you. When you fed the chickens, you always chased the rooster away. So why should I help you?
I mean, he has a point.
Yes, because roosters are aggressive.
Yeah.
So they will eat all of the food and they will fight any of the hens who go after the food. But he's like, well, you've always chased the roosters away. So why would I help you?
This is what would happen if Francis could talk.
Yeah.
We needed
my
his
dog.
friends.
Yeah. And meanwhile, she's watching these chips of wood come away in the evil spirit's hands against the wall of the house. And so she turns to the rooster again and she says, I'm never going to chase another rooster away. Please just help me. Just one cry from you and these ghosts will disappear. And the rooster is like, you promise? And she's like, yes, I promise. I will never chase the roosters away again. And so the rooster crows and immediately the ghost of her lover outside of the house disappears. And the dead man hears it and a look of fear crosses his face, and he runs back over to his body, lays back down inside of it, and disappears. And the girl is saved.
Did you look up roosters?
Yes.
Are you going to tell us? Okay, tell us about that, because I'm so intrigued.
So, something that comes especially from, like, Orthodox Christian religions is the idea of the rooster as an icon of, like, the resurrection of Christ.
Yeah.
Because of the idea of the dawn, and, like, the crying of the dawn is, like, the resurrection, stuff like that. So a lot of times it's used in Christian religious imagery as, like, oh, this is the bird of light, of dawn, of Jesus, and everything like that. So that's one explanation.
I've never compared roosters to doves.
Yeah.
But it's nice.
But some other things, roosters are very prominent in voodoo, Haitian voodoo.
Yeah.
Roosters are a symbol of Mama Brigitte, who is like a protective loa. I think I have that right. I think it's either her or Papa Legba is symbolized by a black rooster. But they're intensely protective spirits.
Yeah.
And something that comes from especially medieval Europe is the idea that the rooster is a protective spirit, and in the night, because when you think of like a cock crowing, you think of the morning.
Yeah.
But if you ever lived near a farm, you know that they don't only crow in the morning, they crow all night long.
That's why you're not allowed to have them in residential neighborhoods.
Yeah.
They're literally illegal in everywhere except for, like, rural areas.
Yeah, but they crow all night long, and so the thinking was that if a rooster crows in the middle of the night, it's because an evil spirit tried to visit your house, and the rooster scared them off.
Yeah.
Which is great. So roosters are just considered like this massively protective entity, and especially in the folklore of the Ozarks, it's like if there's a ghost, a rooster will scare it off, basically, which is great. Some other things, just from the notes in the book by Ruth Ann Music, she talks about there is a cantata, which is composed based on a poem of this story. The cantata is called The Spectre's Bride, and it's very beautiful.
Okay.
And the poem that it's based on is by Karel Jaromir Urban, which I just did that one by the seat of my pants, which is called The Spectre's Bride.
Yeah.
And I read the poem, and it's a little bit different. There's no fortune teller. She just sort of is like, oh, I wish my lover was here, and then he rides up. She doesn't know that he's dead, but he rides up and whisks her away. And as they're riding, he keeps being slowed down because she's wearing a rosary and a cross, and she has a book of hymns in her pocket. And so he keeps being slowed down by these things, and he's like, are you wearing, like, what is that you're wearing? And she's like, oh, it's just a cross that my mom gave me. And he's like, oh, well, that's going to wrap around your neck and kill you. So how about and then like throws it.
Oh no.
And then they get to the cemetery / chapel. And rather than there being one dead man in the cabin who rises up, she escapes from him in the cemetery and runs to the morgue.
Oh no.
Where the one dead man is waiting. But he's not the only one who wakes up.
Yeah.
All of the specters in the cemetery wake up, and all of them are howling at her and screaming and trying to... Yeah, absolutely terrifying. And she gets out of it not through a rooster crow, but by praying to God.
Not as fun.
And then God makes a rooster crow.
Oh, okay. Well, as long as the rooster's there, I suppose, but still not as fun as being face to face in a small enclosure with a dead man.
Yeah, and the moral of the story is that
pray.
Yeah. Stop being in love with people, start being in love with God.
And that's the moral of our podcast, too. Welcome to Sort of the Story, which is in itself a religious podcast.
Ugh, I hate it.
Yeah, but you also signed on for 6 more seasons, so
that's true.
I don't know it.
Also, incidentally, the cantata by Anton Dvorak is called The Spectre's Bride, but was originally called The Bride's Chemise, which is like the bride's bra.
Yeah.
Like her sexy little blouse.
Yeah.
But he had to change the name because Victorian audiences that he was presenting it to were like, that's too lewd. That's nasty.
And they're right.
What else? This is tale type 365. The dead bridegroom carries off his bride. What else?
That's really cool. I really liked that.
Yeah, I think that's all I got.
I like all of the symbolism. I like all of the little, like, nods to very old folk traditions and stuff. Like, that's super cool.
Yeah, there's a really cool, at the introduction of the section Immigrant Ghosts, Ruth Ann Music sort of draws a line in between the different immigrant ghost stories that she presents here. She says, one of the interesting things about these European tales are the national beliefs that are shown in them. For example, the Italian stories favor the theme of the possession of a living body by the spirit of a dead person. I have some half a dozen Italian variations of this theme. In the Balkans, it is the vampire theme, which is most common. There's a vampire story in this, kind of. Yet another notable feature of the European ghost tales that I have found in West Virginia is the malevolence of the spirits in them. Few of these wandering souls are kind or helpful. Perhaps the European tales, rooted in an older tradition, retain more of the fears of early man.
Yeah.
Which is interesting.
Yeah.
Because in a lot of the other ghost stories in this book, the ghosts they're trying to solve their own murder, or they're trying to have the truth come out, or they're trying to save someone from some kind of evil. So a lot of them are benevolent, but a lot, like the stories in the immigrant ghost stories section are all like terrifying. The one that's about a vampire is that this woman's husband dies, and in the middle of the night she keeps like feeling a corpse making out with her.
Ew!
And she goes to the priest and she's like, hey, my dead husband I think is making out with me, and what do I do? And so he tells her to bring a spool
the priest was like, can I ask you what you were wearing?
The priest tells her to bring a spool of red thread to bed with her, and then when her ghost husband starts making out with her, to like subtly tie it around his finger, and then in the morning see where the thread leads to. And so she wakes up in the morning and sees that the red thread leads to her husband's grave outside of the house, and the priest tells her to nail his body into the ground with a stake. So,
vampire.
Yeah, vampire stuff.
But like instead of sucking blood, he's sucking face.
Yeah. Yeah. So anyways, all of the stories in this book are incredible, and I wish I could tell all of them. And maybe someday I will.
One day you will. We'll link this book in the show notes, and we also, on our Instagram, we put pictures of the books that we use, and sometimes paintings and stuff, and little tidbits. So you can follow our Instagram at Sort of the Story if you want info on this book this week.
Yes. We also have a TikTok, which is also Sort of the Story, all one word, no punctuation, and a Twitter by the same handle.
Yep.
And we also have a TeePublic, tpublic.com/user/sort of the story.
Yeah.
So if you want any of the dumbass shit that we say on this fucking podcast on a shirt, you can get it there.
Yeah. And if you have ideas for merch that we've said that you would like to see in TeePublic, email us. sortofthestory@gmail.com. I'm sorry, I'm looking at this microphone. Something bit it. There's a whole ass mouth shape.
Yeah. One of the cats was chewing on the styrofoam of the microphone, and
it's such a pronounced bite mark.
Yeah, it's either one of the cats
bottom?
got to it, or like a small mountain lion.
Yeah, or like
it's shredded.
It's wild. We're gonna have to figure that out. Okay, guys, that was an amazing story. Those are sort of some stories, guys.
Sort of a couple of stories.
Yeah, and we will see you next week.
Bye.
Bye. We're gonna be doing a test.
And a test. And a test. And a test.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Just, we're tap dancing, but in socks, so you can't hear it.
You can't hear it.
But it was really good, and you were really impressed.
Max, I didn't know you could do a full backflip.
Yeah? You want to see me do it 6 more times?
Yeah, really quick. And... Woo! Yeah! Oh, okay. No, 5 is fine. 5 is fine. You don't have to do the full 6.
What if I do 5 2 times in a row? I'm just really looking for your approval. I just feel like I'm not even that good at doing 6 backflips, but you've given me confidence
5
today.
We'll try again next week. All right.